Meeting of the Environmental Advisory Committee together. It's 7:02. So I want to welcome everybody here. My name is Ron Weiss. I'm the councillor for Ward 1. I'm happy to be sharing this meeting for us. I've read all your resumes. I've seen all the work that you've been doing in the past. I'm impressed with everything you've done in the past, and I'm looking forward to working with you in the future. What I'd like to do, and Sean is there. Nice to see you. What I'd like to do before we get any further is just have 1 minute of your time just to say who you are and one or two things about why you want to be on this committee. And where your expertise lies. So I don't forget you, Sean. Can you start us off here? There.
Yeah, sure thing. Hopefully everyone can hear me just fine. Perfect. Hi, everyone. I am a returning member to this committee. I'm Shun Chen. My motivation for sort of joining this committee has always been sort of thinking about the environment. I live really close to Case Woodlot, and it's a very beautiful space, but sadly it's sort of getting taken over, and there's a lot of pollution, and I want to advocate more for that particular area because it's so close to me, and I thought this would be a really good way of doing that.
Hey, thanks. Can I go down this side? This is Jason, right?
That's correct.
Jason, how about you?
My name is Jason. I'm a rural resident for the last 7 years or so. I've been auditing this committee for the last year and a half. Sit back there. Finally a pleasure to be at the table. Professionally, I'm a residential energy advisor. So it's a very good timing that we're getting a memo of the deep energy retrofit tonight. And look forward to the next few years.
Thanks, Dennis.
Yep, my name's Dennis Hain. I've been a Aurora resident, lived here for the past 20 years, I guess. For me, the big thing is in my professional career, I'm a public health epidemiologist. So I'm very interested kind of seeing as we moved into the future, sustainability, built environment, the idea of where that intersection is between health and the well-being of communities, and how the environment will play moving forward. So that's what brings me to this table.
Thanks, Will. Victor.
Hi, I'm Victor Carvalho, master's in engineering, but professionally I'm working as a management consultant, MBA from Ivy Business School. And while I'm here, I've been living in Aurora for the past 3 years, and in the town, my wife and I, my kids, we love it, and we just want to make sure it gets better.
Thank you. Ida?
My name is Lita Dayfoot. I'm retired, so to speak, and a retired teacher. And the environment has always, in all my life, been part of who I am. And be it from being sports to hiking to cycling to kayaking, but gardening, and I go on and on. But even in as a teacher, I always felt it was important for the children to become to be nurtured through the environment as well. So I really do have a passion for it, and with their climate change is real, and I just feel my role as caregiver has the last 2 years has my main retired role was a caregiver, but that has changed, and now I want to give take my second passion, and that is to protect the environment, especially here in Aurora, where I live, for the future generations, really.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ishita. I am the deputy town clerk, and me and my team, we support all of our meetings of council and committees. Usually there's a council and committee coordinator that supports these meetings, but I'm filling in their absence today. And yeah, so our team will always be in touch with you on the agendas and upcoming meetings and schedules.
So when all those comments come in here, she's taking down all those comments. So why not? I'm Ron Weiss. I'm a councillor here. I've been here for 38 years or so, and I like what you said, Peter, because I think we're here to be stewards. And we came here, and we should leave it in a better place than we left when we got here. And same thing with heritage. I'm big on heritage and and preservation. So I'm happy to be here with this group. Al?
Alain Godin. So I've been in Aurora for about 4 years. Professionally, I work for a company that's a leader in sustainability, and the environment's very big for us. So, I want to give back and make sure that I bring some of those practices to Aurora and make sure that we have a better city moving forward.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Natalie Keel. I'm the town's program manager for energy and environment. I've been with the town for about 5 to 6 years now. This is my third committee group, so a lot of familiar faces, new faces. So I'm very looking forward to working with all of you. I'm responsible for the development and implementation of the town's energy and climate change strategic plans and initiatives. So you'll see a lot of my projects come to this group for comments and feedback. So looking forward to this term.
Great. So I'm Will Stover. I joined the town about beginning of November, so a little over 3 months now. I'm enjoying it so far. It's great. I would say I have a passion for the environment, but my professional interests are engineering, energy systems, sustainable energy. So this role, I'm analyzing utility bills, hoping to help with facilities and look at the environmental policy side of things too.
Thanks, Will. Ken?
Hello, I'm Ken, returning to the committee for the second stint of 2 years. Been a resident of the town of Aurora for 24 years. My most recent position was working in communications and public affairs for the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority. So I was responsible there for helping them put together their strategic plan refresh. But I did glean quite a bit of knowledge about the importance of the Lake Simcoe watershed in terms of restoration, phosphorus levels, and the whole role of flood mitigation that the conservation and all conservation authorities play in Ontario, and the importance that they should continue to play in the future of climate change resiliency, and also have an interest in municipal infrastructure and the ability for municipal infrastructure, whether it's through tree canopies and so forth, to help mitigate large-scale weather events that have become kind of epidemic of climate change, and share the notion that we need to be stewards.
Yes, thanks, Ken. Angela?
Hi, my name's Angela, and I've been a resident of Aurora for 28 years. I'm retired. I previously worked for the City of Toronto in the Parks, Forestry and Recreation Department as part of a team that did the 20-year strategic plan for parks, including the canopy cover and resiliency for flood mitigation, etc. We also bought a wreck of a house, a 150-year-old wreck of a house in Aurora 28 years ago, and basically renovated it from top to bottom, including a new foundation to R2000 quality. And since we have a stream on our property, which was just grass right down to the water, I've planted the entire property with native species in hopes that it attracts and feeds wildlife. And judging by the number of tracks on my driveway, I think it worked.
Counselor, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Wendy Gertner. I sat on this committee for the last 2 years, and the previous and first environmental advisory committee in a little while. And want to leave.
Glad you came. Again, I'd like to welcome you all. I'm impressed with your resumes, but also you being here. And I think we've got an excellent group of a variety of environmental expertise in the room. So no matter what comes forward to us, we should feel confident we can deal with it. My job here is just to act as a chair. I don't pretend to know half of what you folks know in the environment, but I'm happy to hear about it and learn more about it. So you just take my keys on who speaks when, and I want you to feel that this is an open forum in some respects. I don't like to work on Robert's rules and all that. She shouldn't hear that. But I just want to get all the information up on the table because that will be more effective that way. So first thing we should do now that we've done the this bit of information is to appoint a committee vice chair. Before you had two people who are council members who are chair and vice chair. And I think that if I'm ever missing, or if you would like to take over the chair's position, I'd be happy to let you do that and learn how to do that chair's position. I get all sorts of instructions from Sheeta here, so you don't need to worry about that. But does anybody like to nominate themselves or nominate another person to be the vice chair of this committee? The floor is open. You can nominate yourself if you'd like to take on that little chore. I promise you, I won't dump all this on you. Be here as often as I can. Ken?
I was just raising my hand just to let my hair up actually.
Are you nominating yourself?
Okay. And if there's no other people willing to entertain
Don't be
themselves.
shy. I mean,
Well, what
Sure.
does it entail?
you come to the meetings. Sheeta or her delegate will provide you with what you have to do from a procedural standpoint. And basically just keep your eye and try to get as much information out of the committee, because remember the committees, these comments are important. You're experts in this area. And if you have a comment on what's happening with this particular issue, then those comments come down. They get written up into a report. That report comes to council and the council members will read them in advance. And hopefully they will act on that information. Now, mind you, you do your thing with your expertise, but once it gets to council, there are other things that have to be put on, such as the cost of things and other issues that may come forward. So I don't want to give you, I want to give you as much advice as I can, and you can give us as much advice as I can, but it doesn't mean that necessarily everything you say is going to be approved by council. So we're just providing information to council. So if Angela, you're interested in it, or
I know Ken has far more experience than I do in this, with council and things like that.
okay, thanks. Any other person would like to be nominated or nominate someone else? No? Okay, if that's all, can I get a motion then to approve approve Ken as the vice chair? Sandra, seconder? Yeah, thank you. Jason? No more comments on it? All in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Ben, you're on. I'm leaving and you can take over this. Yeah, kidding. Okay, so let's move on to the next nominations, and that's all done. The land acknowledgement, we do a land acknowledgement every time at all of these official meetings, so let me do that. The town of Aurora acknowledges that the Anishinaabe lands on which we live and work are the traditional and treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island, as well as many other nations whose presence here continues to this day. As the closest First Nation community to Aurora, we recognize the special relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and waters of this territory. They are the water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and as a municipality, we join them in these responsibilities. We further acknowledge that Aurora is part of the treaty lands of the Mississaugas and Chippewas, recognized through Treaty Number 13, as well as the Williams Treaty of 1923. A shared understanding of how the rich cultural heritage has existed for centuries and how our collective past brought us to where we are today will help us walk together into a better future. And that land acknowledgement is no better stated than in this room with you people. So can I get an approval for the agenda, please? I assume you've all had the opportunity to look at your agenda. Everybody knows where the agendas are and how you get them, correct? So we don't have any of that. Can I get a motion then to approve the agenda? Then? Either? Any comments to it? From an agenda, well, Sheeta, do we have new business at the end of it?
You do.
Yeah.
So normally I would say, yeah, anything you want to add to it, we can do it in the new business. So all in favor of approving agenda? Opposed? Great, that carries. Thanks very much. Anybody have any declarations of pecuniary interest here? Good, seeing none. The minutes were also posted at the last meeting. I wasn't here, but I did read through them, so I won't vote on it. But do you have any errors or omissions that you saw out of those minutes? Anybody have any? No, seeing none, can I get a motion then to approve the, oh, Ken?
So moved.
Okay. Ahead of me. That's a move. Seconder? Thank you. All in favor? Super, thanks. We have no delegations tonight, so we do have a matter for consideration, one of them this evening. I assume that you've read the information. This is a memorandum from our program manager, Energy and Environment, regarding the project introduction of the home energy retrofit loan program. So we're first going to have a presentation from Janice Ashworth from Dunsky Energy and Climate Advisor. Welcome, Janice. Janice is up there somewhere. Okay, you can hear us and we can hear you.
I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
We're ready to go.
Okay.
So if you could walk us through the presentation so we can get our comments up.
Great. Okay. Can you see my screen all right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, thanks everyone for those great introductions. I agree with what was said, that it sounds like there's a wealth of knowledge in the room, and I very much look forward to hearing your feedback on what I have to present tonight. So by way of introduction, so yes, I'm here from Dunsky Energy and Climate Consulting, our advisors, where we were retained by the town of Aurora to help with this feasibility study to look at the home energy retrofit loan program concept and see if it would be a good model for Aurora and make some suggestions for how that could take shape. So tonight we're going to go through the context, the work plan, and get your feedback on that report. Just by way of introducing Dunsky and myself, so Dunsky is a firm that is across Canada and into the US. We're headquartered in Montreal with offices in Toronto and Vancouver and Halifax and Ottawa, where I'm in the Ottawa area. Dunsky's been around for about 20 years. We're made up of about 60 staff across the country, and we've worked across about 100 different jurisdictions. We bring together analysis and strategy. So we have a team of engineers who are excellent at data analysis and deriving trends and stories from that data. And then we have a team of strategic advisors who help sort of take that data analysis and turn it into practical policy advice. We cover many different elements of the energy transition, from buildings, mobility, industry, and energy itself. And so we've worked with a number of different municipalities on these kinds of topics regarding home energy loan programs and financing solutions. Myself, I previously worked with the City of Ottawa prior to joining the Dunsky team, where I helped design and implement exactly this kind of program, a home energy loan program in the City of Ottawa. So I'm very happy to answer questions or speak to that experience as well. And I'll bring that to the front here. Here's some of our clientele. You can see we cover, a fair chunk of North America with some of our projects. So jumping into the project here today with you folks. You likely know this already, but by way of background, in 2019, Aurora declared the climate emergency that was followed up in 2021 with a community energy plan. And that set your community reduction targets for greenhouse gases at 80% by 2050. So Natalie's well-versed in that. She's working hard on making that a reality. Then in 2022, the town adopted their climate change adaptation plan, and 2 years later, adopted a net zero carbon target for the corporation, for the municipality itself, again by 2050. So looking at residential emissions from the private building sector, that accounts for about 37% of the town's total greenhouse gas emissions. And that's why Natalie was wise to, dig into what the town could do to help reduce that chunk of emissions, as it's a pretty substantial one. And so far, the town has taken a number of steps to reduce community emissions. a Go Green Challenge, reducing emissions at the town's buildings and using those as demonstration projects. They've installed electric vehicle charging stations on public right-of-ways. They've introduced waste reduction measures, and they've developed the green development standards. So that's kind of background for the study. The objective of this study is to design a program that will support homeowners to undertake home energy improvements at their own homes. Anything you want to add to that, Natalie? Feel free to chime in if I'm missing anything.
Oh, covers
Great.
it. Yeah.
Okay, we pulled this data from your energy plan, your energy and emissions plan. Across Aurora, homes are relatively new and relatively detached. The most represented archetype of home is a single detached home that's built since the 1980s. So that gives you a pretty standard sort of vintage and archetype to work with, which is nice. Again, like I mentioned, 37% of emissions come from homes, and specifically the most emissions from homes come from space heating. You folks in this room probably know that, but that is not a common understanding across the public. So we do always try to highlight that. Mostly natural gas furnaces are used for space heating within Aurora, and as well as for water heating. And so if you look at the breakdown of what types of heating are used in Aurora, this bottom right graph, you can see the large portion of homes use that natural gas, the orange color there, and only a small amount are on electric heating. Wood heating, fuel oil makes up 4%, and propane is 3%. So you can see, again, a pretty standard replicated archetype across the town. Okay, so the role of a program such as a home energy loan program would be to overcome market barriers to help expedite that retrofit activity and make sure it gets into more energy and emissions reductions efforts. So some barriers that are fairly common across the industry or across the residential market is an access to competitive and trustworthy financing. So a solution that municipalities have at their disposal can be to offer municipal financing or work with a utility or private sector partners to offer sort of a trusted municipally backed loan product. But other barriers exist as well, such as public awareness, knowledge. So home energy ratings and retrofit pathways can help the public become more familiar with what they can do at home and really start at the most effective place. Sometimes people don't know where to start within a home energy improvement project. Some things that have been done to help that within other municipal programs include having an energy hotline, so a sort of phone a friend sort of service for some of that neutral advice to help them with knowing where to start. Also, thermal cameras, like the picture at the bottom there on the right. That's an example of a camera that's used, that's made available in libraries in some municipalities for homeowners to borrow and see where they have potentially hot spots or leaking spots on their building envelope. Another barrier can be access to skilled labor. The quality and quantity of labor can be limiting. So training for contractors is a way to improve both the quantity and quality of the labor market to answer these net zero retrofit questions. And then finally, motivation. So homeowners just getting to it. And so incentives for equipment or performance standards can help with that, help people take the action now. Also, support for target audiences or outcomes, like maybe there's particular neighborhoods where there's opportunity for energy savings, and we would like to target them with particular outreach or support. And there might be additional objectives that the town has that they might like to couple with this kind of program. For example, in Ottawa, again, they had a motivation to increase densification or intensity of occupancy and increase densification downtown. So they included additional dwelling units as an additional retrofit measure that could be funded through the retrofit program, the loan program there. As well as climate resiliency measures are often an added component to reduce flood risk or high winds or that kind of thing. So those kinds of measures can be woven together into a home energy loan program to make it more comprehensive and perhaps attract a wider audience as well. By way of example, there are four programs here that I'm pointing out. So Durham, not so far from you folks, has a greener homes program. It includes an energy coaching service as well as a home labeling platform. That's an online platform that's been very successful. They worked with a private lender, some credit unions locally, to offer their financing service, and that was not as effective. So their energy coaching service and labeling platform had a lot of uptake, but they didn't see many people following through with the loans from their service provider. They went through other financing options through the Durham program to finance their retrofits. So there's some good takeaways and learning from that program. The Ottawa Better Homes Loan Program was a municipal loan solution, so using a PACE type solution or a mechanism called the local improvement charge, which allows the municipality to offer loans to individual addresses and have it repaid through the property tax bill. That was the mechanism used in the next three programs that I'll explain. In Ottawa, the loans were for energy efficiency, for renewable energy solutions, and for secondary suites, like I mentioned. The loan terms were 20 years, and they included some contractor training support to help improve the quantity and quality of the market, of the skilled labor market. In Halifax, they have the Solar City program, which offered municipal loans to homeowners for solar panels specifically. They were kind of a one equipment or one mechanism sort of solution at first. They've expanded since then, but when they first started, it was specifically for solar panels, which really drove a lot of uptake of that particular equipment. And in Toronto, the first one in Ontario, the Home Energy Loan Program there, it's very similar to Ottawa's program. In fact, the two were working hand in glove for a number of their rollout strategies. So those two programs are very similar. Okay, moving along here. So retrofitting at scale, a financing program alone is not enough to generate the demand for efficiency retrofits. So you need to think about that comprehensive sort of package, and that's where we'll be providing Natalie with some design solutions for that. The municipalities do have additional tools in their tool belt to increase demand. And some of those include education and support, some of that public outreach through libraries, through recreation centers. Municipalities are very close to the residents of their region, so they're able to, have many touch points for communications purposes. Energy labeling is another interesting solution that can really drive demand and bring more people into the funnel. So energy labeling, that's the concept of giving each home a score. A rating, similar to the walk score that you might see on like an MLS or realtor.ca listing. You think you can get an energy score or an emission score for a home. And more municipalities are coming up with these kinds of home labeling solutions to help, again, drive education, awareness, and help people understand how important energy consumption is into the value of a home. Codes and standards and performance requirements are other tools that municipalities have more on the regulatory side. So municipalities can't set the building code, but they can add components like emission standards or labeling requirements through bylaws that can be specifically, local to the municipality and not at the provincial level, like the building code. And then the incentives and financing, that's kind of the next step. So once you create that demand, then how do you help people realize those solutions or be compliant with codes? And that's where incentives and financing can come into play. And then capacity, so making sure that the labor market is there to be able to meet that accelerated demand is also an important element. You can't drive people to a solution and then not have them and not have them be able to implement the objectives. So we have to think about all these pieces in cohesion so that we have a solution that is effective and can be implemented by homeowners. Market readiness. So in the long run, policy can influence program uptake. So beyond the initial years of the program. So you might see quite a big uptake at the beginning of the program for pent-up demand or some, maybe there's some folks ready to jump in, but in order to maintain that not just the early adopters, but get into kind of the mass market, that's where some of these additional sort of support tools will be really helpful. The education tools, the, tying it to other measures that might be attractive to the sort of mushy middle, sometimes we call them. They're not necessarily driven by green motivations or environment, but they're interested in property value, in comfort, in maintaining their home, and some other elements that might be resiliency measures, that kind of thing. Some policy solutions that also can help are things like carbon pricing that can help drive people towards wanting to reduce utility bills. Some provinces have implemented building regulations, like in Quebec, they have a restriction on fossil fuel use. They're no longer allowing oil furnaces to be replaced as oil furnaces when they run out to the end of their life expectancy. So those kinds of provincial tools can help drive demand, and having a municipal program available and ready to absorb that demand can really help help your residents succeed through some of this energy transition, the bumps of the energy transition. Typically, we see three different options for financing at the municipal level. The first one that I mentioned, that Halifax, Toronto, and Ottawa all used this first solution, which is leveraging the local improvement charge, sometimes referred to as PACE, which stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy. That's an American term that has taken hold. But the mechanism within the Ontario Municipal Act is really the local improvement charge mechanism. And that there's an option for that to be applied at the individual address level rather than at a neighborhood level, as it typically was thought to handle, or was designed to handle. So Ontario does allow for that mechanism. And there are often, within the municipal departments, there's experience for how to do that. The loan collection is done through the property tax billing system. So it's just an add-on to that existing administrative function that the municipalities play. The next one in line here, the on-bill repayment. This is really working with a utility. Typically, the electric utility would be the partner. And that's where a loan would be offered to a homeowner and then collected through the electric utility bill. We haven't seen that happen much across Canada, really. Waterloo is exploring this as the first pilot project within Ontario, and so we might see that take off in the next few months. But as of yet, we did have, and Natalie and I did have a conversation with your electric utility, and they didn't seem very willing to explore this one. So we won't be going into that one in too much detail in the study, because it really does take a willing partner at the utility side. We also spoke to Enbridge about this, and they said they no longer offer that service either as a collection mechanism on their bill. So again, that door was kind of shut. The third option here is really a direct lending solution, working with a private financing partner or multiple partners. Again, like I mentioned, Durham Region Municipality, their program used this type of mechanism, and it was in collaboration with the credit unions locally. The challenge with this one, it's the simplicity of this one is nice from a municipal point of view. There's no collections, there's no repayment on your tax bill. It's very administratively simple. However, it's more challenging to have competitive loan terms because the private sector or the private financing partner isn't as able to offer competitive terms as a municipal lender. So then they don't have access to as good rates for capital, and they're not able to be as competitive. So the Durham program didn't see a lot of uptake because the credit union partner was not able to offer very good terms. Now you might be able to negotiate with a local financial institution and find better terms, but as of yet, the ones we've seen using that mechanism there hasn't been a lot of uptake. Okay, so some key stakeholders in this whole process. Of course, there's the funder. So most of these programs have started with funding from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. That's the target funder that Aurora has been looking at as well, but there could be others, and private lenders might also play into that. And then there's the town as potential administrators of the project. They have an administrative role to develop and especially do the collections if it's using the LIC mechanism. But then you might also partner with a nonprofit organization. For example, Windfall Ecology Center is quite active in delivering the Durham program and a few other municipalities. You might have a lender involved, and you might have the utilities could help in various ways, from simply promotions or data provision or helping get the word out within their clientele. Some of the utilities also have their own incentive programs, and those would be, it's nice to couple or dovetail those and stack those on top of a financing program. So first, a homeowner takes advantage of any grants that are available, and then they pay for the rest through some sort of loan program or loan product that we would come up with for using this under this program. And then, of course, you have your homeowners, who are your ultimate target audience and have a lot of work to do in this type of situation too. They have to implement the retrofits, which we heard from Angela can be fairly complicated and require a fair bit of time and expertise. So that's not a small task that the homeowners have to play. Contractors and service providers, of course, have a large role to play in implementing the work, but also as educators and as communications channels. Right now, they are often the main point of contact with homeowners and providing them knowledge. And sometimes it's nice to include a neutral, energy coach in the service to help guide, the solutions that contractors are providing and make sure that homeowners have trustworthy information. And then you've got your potential partners. They could be either administrators or partners, those utilities and those lenders. Okay, so that's kind of the context. So let's jump into the work plan just to give you an overview of what my team is working on. So we're doing interviews. The first step was interviews with some of the key stakeholders. We've already interviewed pretty much all of these folks. So York Region, the local utilities, both Electra and Enbridge. We're still waiting to hear back from a contractor association. We've got a call lined up next week with them. We had a chat with the Aurora Senior Center. We've spoken to a number of town staff in relevant departments. We did some questionnaires by email of the lower tier municipalities in York Region, and we've tried to reach some financial institutions by questionnaire, but have had limited response so far. So we might have to keep poking there or try other ways of reaching them. And there's been a homeowner survey or a questionnaire circulating and is wrapping up in the next week or so with responses from residents. The question to you folks here is there anyone else that we should talk to? Have we missed any stakeholders that you think are critical to the design of this program?
Yes, I think they should be speaking with Passive House as well, because they train contractors regarding zero energy houses and retrofits.
Okay, so Passive House as an organization?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks for that.
Janice, you want us to take these chunks as you have these questions here and then feed those back to you bit by bit? So, because I noticed you've got 3 or 4 of these kinds of slides with these questions on them. So I don't have a problem with getting it while it's hot here. Is that what you prefer?
Yeah, I'm taking notes here as people are shouting them out. But if there's people writing comments or whatnot, I'd be very happy to receive those later too, if I'm not hearing it all.
Yeah, well, I don't really want people shouting things out, but it'd be good to say, let's focus on this, and then we'll move on to the next slide if that's what you'd prefer to do. Because we've left some of the context stuff, because there are probably some questions on context as well.
Oh, sure. Sorry, did I miss some hands going up with questions?
Yeah, and what we should do is have a motion to receive this presentation and then have the conversations about it in a way that's really organized, because Sheeta's worried about gathering all this information in an organized fashion. So if you wouldn't mind.
You can put that motion.
Let me get the motion underway right now. So can I get a motion to receive the report? And then we can have these discussions. Theta, so moved. Seconder. Thanks, Alan. Okay. All in favor? Great. So now we can carry on a little bit. more organized. So again, it's up to you, Janice, how you'd like us to move. I don't care which way it is, but if you want to go slide by slide and ask and answer questions, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that was how I was envisioning it.
Okay, so do we have any other questions about this whole stakeholder engagement before we move along from any of the group?
Well, I actually just want a little bit of a clarification because when I moved here in 2008 and bought a house, there was a Microsoft program, solar panels program. And there was also the retrofit program that was centered out of Shepherd's Bush there at the Ecology House. So I'm wondering, a lot of what, sorry, I've got her name. Janice has presented has already actually been done. So I'm just trying to fit where this is going and how that it is starting. Like you mentioned a number of 4 different cities, and those 4 cities were doing much of the program that I got involved in 2008. Right?
Yep.
So do you have
Yeah,
a
you're
question?
quite right. So there are quite a few programs, related things in the market, and market confusion is a concern. But you know, and programs come and go. So since 2008, we've probably seen an ebb and flow of at the federal level at least once or twice, at the provincial level as well. So it is sort of hard to keep track for the homeowners to keep track of which programs exist and which ones, you know, have sunset. Right now, there's a few in market. So the federal government has a Canada Greener Homes loan program that offers loans. It used to offer grants, but now just offers $40,000 interest-free loans for 10 years for homeowners to do energy upgrades in their home. They did just recapitalize it. Now there's a lot of fluctuation at the federal level expected, so that might change. But as of right now, that program does seem to continue for the next has legs for the next few years, it seems. At the provincial level, they also just last month released a new program that is being delivered mostly through Enbridge, but also through the IESO, and that is a home renovation savings program. So it offers grants for certain work to be done, mostly energy efficiency work. Both have different steps that you take to become eligible and qualify. So yes, you're right. There's a lot of sort of layers and stacking of these kinds of initiatives. And then for folks who are income qualified, they have a number of other things that they're eligible for. Or those who are on oil heating also, again, have a number of other things that they're eligible for at the provincial and federal level. So there is a bit of, you know, program confusion perhaps, and one of the things that the energy coaches really help people do is is understand which programs they're eligible for and go through the application process with them. That can be a big role of the energy coach, in addition to explaining some of the building science concepts and navigating contractor quotes. You know, navigating the programs is a big part of it too.
So an inventory of these programs that are out there would be an advantage for us. Natalie?
I'll just add to what Janice was saying is that there have been a lot of different programs over the years, and the uptake in which we need these types of projects to occur needs to accelerate much faster than historically it's been implemented. Like that's great news that like you were one of not many of the time who did this type of program. So we're under this program, we want to assess what are the barriers of more people accessing these types of programs and trying to address them and utilizing the tools available at the municipal level to really accelerate the rate of implementation at this point. So it's a very valid comment.
Right. And I guess what I'm saying is, can't we piggyback on some of those programs rather than trying to reinvent the whole wheel again? Because I think you just brought out the main problem is that initial getting people involved and advertisement of it. So, and getting that initiative going. But it is bringing it all together. Like if you want it, you can look at Angela's found it. You know, like Angela's done that for you. If I wanted to make changes in my house, I looked to Toronto. We looked for them. But I think what you're saying is what this is going to offer is it's going to be in one place, which it was at one place at Eco House at Shepherd's Bush, which doesn't exist anymore.
No, it's still.
So you are reinventing the wheel.
Other comments?
I think Windfall Ecology is still.
Yeah, it's still very much.
It's
there.
still
Oh, yeah,
there?
yeah.
They're
Mhm.
still there.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Again, getting back to the stakeholder, other
Yeah.
questions around the
Yeah.
stakeholder, Dennis?
For me, I can't think of anyone that you're missing, but when I look at the homeowner questionnaire,
Hmm.
I'm wondering if there are any concerns about coverage or representativeness of people who are answering that questionnaire. If it's representative of all homeowners and kind of like a sample, I can see how this is great. But if they're only like people who are answering it, say from like Ward 1, right, and not from other wards, is there any way to kind of detect them? And is that a concern for this engagement, or is it just whoever fills it out, they're talking for Aurora?
Yeah, Natalie, I mean, I welcome you to chime in on this one too. I know that there's been some effort. Natalie and her team have tried to get it out to many different channels, including, the senior center has circulated it to try to get some of that demographic, through the town's channels to gather feedback. But Natalie, do you want to chime in on what I haven't seen the responses yet from that survey. So do you have any insights into who's been filling it out or how it's been circulating?
So we're not collecting any identifiable information through the survey, so we won't be able to get that level of granularity to the responses. But we have been trying to utilize as many of our channels as possible, like social media, our local news letter, our town staff, because we actually have a lot of residents, town staff. And then we engaged with our senior center group, which is a large membership, as well as a particular interested group within the project. But yeah, we are not able to identify their address or location within the town, but there was a measure within the survey to at least filter out non-residents. So it was really important trying to focus residents from the town.
First time ones before we go to the second?
Yeah, I would add to engage energy advisors like myself that are certified through NRCan. I'm also in agreement with Passive House Consultants. But additionally, I'd like to see someone from real estate associations and maybe financial advisors so that the homeowner is well aware of what happens when an LIC gets attached to their property. Because I could talk to them like, yeah, you should do this, and this is how much it'll cost, but I want to make sure that they're aware what it's going to do to their property taxes.
Okay. Other members, first time?
Oh, I'm not.
First time? Anybody? Okay,
I think she was.
sorry, Lita had her hand up.
Oh, well, it was just a follow-up to the questionnaire is that I thought the questionnaire was closed when I on the website that it closed on January the 25th, on January 30th. Is it
No,
still
it's for
open?
the month of February. So it only actually, I think, started by that time it would have opened. So it should be still open for the rest of the month.
Okay.
So we can share it. I don't know if there's anyone in the group that didn't fill it out or didn't see.
Well, we didn't, I didn't notice it there.
Oh,
I didn't know it was there. And so I'm just saying, how many people have actually noticed it? Like, is there another way of getting it out to more people?
That's what I was gonna say.
Angela, go ahead.
Honestly, I'm on social media and I'm part of this committee and I didn't even know about this. And I think especially with a lot of the older people that aren't on social media, mail out a flyer. A lot of people who are older, they rely on physical paper to get information. So I think maybe just spend a few bucks on a flyer and send it out to all the residents.
Go with the tax billing.
Go with the tax billing, yeah. Or the water bill. Put it with the water bill.
Ken?
Through you, Mr. Chair. And that would be my concern is, a bit of a trust factor. So we've talked about trust in terms of financing, but I think that people are generally suspect even when the town is attempting to replace water meters. And so having a program like this really needs to be seen coming from the town. So whether it's through social media or a flyer with a water bill and so forth, that you're trying to get greater buy-in to it and so forth. That would be my concern, is that I think that people are highly suspect of people coming to your door nowadays and purporting to represent some level of government and providing energy savings, only to find that there's a lien against their house and so forth. We've seen that in, like, consumer reports in the media and so forth. So that would be my concern. I think it's a good program. But I think it's just the trust in the finance, the trust in who is sponsoring, and if the town is acting as the point of contact, I think that is necessarily a good thing. But that would be among my concerns, and then also to are there overlapping programs with the different levels of with the province or and so forth. And I'm just a little concerned about the reluctance of some of the utility companies to so if this is something that is to come from the town, there needs to be little or no cost to the town and the in terms of promoting it and so forth, but also having access subject experts such as yourself, right, that you were mentioning, that are qualified and so forth. So that would be my only concern.
Thanks, Victor.
No, I was just going to say, so the main key stakeholder here is pretty much people, and from what I've seen, it doesn't look like we are going to capture much of people's input, given that we are only assessing their input via this online form that is not easily available. So I think it's important for us to actually better understand their points of view and make sure this program meet their needs. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter how good we do, how many other partners we have. It's not going to work if people are not interested.
Great, thanks. Any other comments from the group?
Have they done an open house for this?
Good question. The question is, have you had an open house on this, Janice? Or through Natalie? I don't know.
Yeah, Natalie and I have been chatting about using the Earth Day event to also try to get people to weigh in on the program design. You're providing really good feedback. I think that you're quite right, but there's also a timing element of at what point do we have enough to really kind of get homeowners' input on something. So there's different stages of engagement, and I think that will be we kind of rolling the engagement. But yeah, Natalie, do you want to speak to some of your thoughts around the Earth Day event and how we might use that as kind of a forum for further engagement when we're further along?
Yeah, sure. So we're gonna have a table at the home show, the Aurora Home Show.
Just gonna ask you.
So we'll be presenting the project. We'll have a somewhat similar kind of questionnaire to gain feedback from the public. And also we've invited some of our, partners, like our utilities, to come and participate in that event and promote existing programs that they have today, or some that are in development. So just to show that kind of unity with our partners. And we hope for it to, we're planning like an interactive kind of booth, for residents to come in and learn about home energy, and also gain feedback about the project.
Great, okay, thanks.
So,
Victor,
sorry, the date is April 28th, I believe. So it's like the same, it's within Earth Week. So we thought that was a good fitting
Good idea.
event, yeah.
Victor, second time.
Oh, that's a great idea. But Would it be interesting to also consider the library as a potential partner in this, like lots of people go to
Good idea.
library,
Cultural center.
Yeah, and might be interesting.
Good point. Our library has about 500,000 visits.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I was gonna comment on is, I mean, talking about homeowners, but from a demographic, I mean, young people seem to drive a lot of new initiatives as well out of the schools. And I don't know if we've got anything going on at schools. If you look at recycling, that all came out of elementary and high schools. That's where it got its original start. So it's something to think about as another stakeholder group, maybe not writing checks, but they're influencers of various things. So, Elaine, you had your hand up first time. So.
I was gonna say, yes, have we missed anybody? Is there a liability of us pushing this type of program? And have we looked into it? Because we're basically pushing an idea, but then it's gonna be taken care of by a third party. So legally, are we exposing ourselves?
It'll be captured here that you're concerned about the legal liability of recommending one versus another, et cetera. That's a real good point. Dennis, do you have your hand up ready to say something?
Yeah. I think as we think about other ways to kind of collect data from homeowners and stuff, I think one of my recommendations might be one of my suggestions would be if we can kind of think about what the key characteristics are so that we can kind of assess representativeness, because I feel like depending on what feedback we get from these questionnaires, I'd be really interested to know, are we building a program for a very narrow part of our population or for a wider part of our population? And I wouldn't be surprised if, depending on who you are, you might have different needs and might be looking for different things. Right. So I feel like it'd be really important to be able to get that from the data that we're collecting from homeowners to say it's like, oh, maybe it's not place, maybe it's age, maybe it's income, maybe it's something else, but whatever that criteria is, if we can make sure that we collect the data and to assess representativeness.
Like an equity lens.
Yes, yeah. Like, are we building a program for retrofits of $1 million homes? Or are we doing it for seniors, or are we doing for, I feel like that will.
Good point.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, that sort of brings in another question or another level, and that is you can promote it by showcasing what we do have, right? And what your home, Angela, okay, that people are doing, okay, that it is being done and it works. I know they have many projects in Toronto that show it. You can invite them up and come and show what they've done. And there's a number of projects that did you say, but also, and now this is another level that I don't think has been talked about yet, is that what is the town council and their development program actually putting down in when new development comes in, what are their policies for new development?
You
I
develop.
think it was mentioned in here, building codes and
Yes.
that type of thing. I mean, it all depends.
Like, I
whether you want to
mean,
lead or follow.
do it by example. Do it by example. Show that the developers, if they want to put developers in here, then start from the ground. Be proactive.
Should
Definitely
move
easier to
on.
build
We
right
got
the
other
first
things to
time.
do here, but Councillor?
Sorry, Janice?
Actually,
Sorry, Janice, you have a comment?
Oh, just to echo what was just said, it's definitely easier to build right the first time than to have to create these retrofit programs and go back and fix things later. So that's not the target of this particular project, but I do concur with that statement.
Councillor, just a.
yes, the town does have a green building standards. Very complicated, but builders have to pick two things. Natalie, maybe you can two things one year and then but the most important thing I know from a presentation that we got at Lake Simcoe Board on passive houses, insulation and windows. Like that's where you save the money, and you can easy to provide stats on before and after.
I had a comment, you must have updated your file here because you had in the previous one, the DEI representatives, and I don't see them up there. Was there a rationale for removing DEI? Because someone already brought up equity and equity deserving people, so. Janice,
Yeah,
is
we
there a
spoke
reason why it was
to
taken
to
out?
the town staff about that, and they recommended, or we collectively decided that the senior center would be a really good representative to speak to about, you know, equity deserving populations who also own homes. Because that's the kind of niche that we're looking for, is home ownership and, you know, and needing that support. So that was where we inserted I replaced senior center for DEI representative generally, because we had spoken to Haley Jones, I believe, and she had advised us that that would be one good demographic.
Okay, I just noticed, wanted to ask a question, so.
Yeah.
Can we move along then, folks? Have we exhausted this? Because we have other things we need to look at. So Janice, go ahead to the next slide, if you will.
Perfect. Yeah. So this is just about the methodology. I did update this one too a little bit just to make it a bit easier to kind of read. So yeah, our methodology for the assessment here is to start with engagement. We've talked a fair bit about that, of how we're planning to, or how we are doing engagement. And then we do some modeling at our end of the data that we've gathered from the property, the MPAC, Municipal Property Assessment Corporation. Natural Resources Canada has a bunch of their energy audit data, Statistics Canada data. We've got the census data from Aurora. And we use all that to then come up with retrofit packages of different types of measures and we can model the cost of those, as well as the energy savings and the greenhouse gas savings from each of those packages. And then we can scale that to what would the program need for capital inputs in order to be able to meet those, you know, the loans that would be likely to be requested through those retrofit packages. At the same time, we're now moving into the program, or we'll then move into the program concept stage, and that's really where a needs benefit assessment will come in, and we'll speak to exactly what's been discussed in the room here. Of there's already other programs in market. How do we fill gaps that still exist and not just replicate or reinvent the wheel? How do we not add confusion to this already sort of confusing market? But how do we really sort of try to fill gaps? So that's where the needs benefit assessment comes in and really comes out in the program concept component. We also have to just determine which of the financial models we'd like to leverage, if any. If we are planning to offer a financing product, we need to pick one of those 3 different options. And that's where a fair bit of input from the town staff is valuable, as well as some of the key private stakeholders. And then we take it to there's a town internal review committee that's been helping guide along this process, and they'll be doing a workshop to advise on a number of these steps, looking at the different financial models and deciding which is the most applicable, and then thinking about some of the key program concepts. Then we'll come back to this committee and present the findings of the feasibility study, and also take that to council. And at that point, there's a decision if a full program design is warranted, and if Aurora would like us to continue. Are there any key inputs on the methodology? I do have more questions for you, so there's lots more conversation to have, but just wanted to know if there's any questions on this methodology or suggestions.
Hey, members, any questions you may have at this point? My question is, when do you think you're going to have this feasibility study ready to come back to the EAC and then going to council? Do you have some timelines on that?
We're targeting June for that council date.
Okay. No other questions? I guess I think it's a good thing.
Well, considering what we talked about previously, do you have enough time to do that? Like to get that other information that?
Yeah, I think we've got time for the analysis required. Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
Okay. So let's move along to the feedback portion. So I've got some key questions here for you around the target audience. So you've all talked about sort of, are we getting the correct input from the representative that's representative of Aurora homeowners? My question back to you then is also, who would you suggest we target with this program? Are we looking for sort of broad uptake across the whole community, as many folks as possible able to take advantage? Are we looking at particular, supporting particular vulnerable communities or community members who would need extra support for this? And how does the equity considerations kind of layer into that? So I think that's a question I'd love to hear this committee provide us some input on.
Members? Yeah. Angela?
I have a 25-year-old son who is renting a basement apartment with his wife, and he would love to get into the home ownership whole thing. However, it's prohibitive. Now they're looking at maybe buying a fixer-upper, but the problem is, given the mortgage that they would have to get, would they even be able to afford another loan on top to fix it up? Like, there's a lot of grant programs before, and we did our basement with that because we replaced our furnace, our air conditioner, our hot water tank. We insulated the basement, put new windows, and we got $5,000 back. That to me would be more of an incentive for people to buy into this program.
Yeah, I think the question is about target audience, and
So young people would be
Well-
probably a target audience.
to me, it looks like the target is the built form.
Mhm.
I mean, if you look at houses that were built last year, or in the last 10 or the last 15, they're probably not nearly, I live in a 125-year-old home, and I have people knocking on my door all the time, and I can tell you my problem is that I don't know whether, as what Ken said before, I don't know if they're reputable. I don't know if they're licensed. I don't know if they're certified. I don't know any of that. And so I tend to shy away. And so it's a built form thing, and it's a reputational kind of thing for me, but I'd like to hear what you guys think about it. And again, you have to look at it in the short term and the long term. What are our priorities, maybe, is the target. How about?
Well, you're talking.
I like that idea of the built form. I feel like in your modeling, Janice, that there might be some opportunity to say if these types of houses were retrofitted, how much bang for a buck we might have compared to other houses, and that information might be helpful. I'm also thinking about the opportunity of when people are doing things, right? So if a person's furnace breaks down, I feel like that's the key opportunity to replace the furnace, right? So I'd also like to kind of see if this program can kind of also capitalize on that opportunity. Because, for example, when I think about electric vehicles, people say it's like, oh, I'd love to get an electric vehicle, but my car is like, I just bought it 5 years ago. It's good for another 5 years, right? So trying to balance that would be helpful.
Okay.
Great suggestion. Yeah, at that time of major equipment replacement.
Lita?
And if I can concur with what you just said, basically that's my demographic.
Yeah.
Because I moved into a new house, it needed a new furnace, needed a new roof, okay, needed insulation, okay, all these things that needed, and you look at that and you look at what programs are out there. So yes, absolutely, that is, the demographic to make it. And that would come again from utilities as well. As they have, if they buy into this, they say, listen, there's a program. And usually they're very good at doing that. At least some of the people that I've dealt with, telling you what the programs are. So that demographic for sure, absolutely. But to be honest, I actually also think, again, it's the new builds again. I think you have to, anything that there are new builds, we have to have the policies in for the new builds.
Do you think that's a policy solution for new builds and not so much a sort of program financing support and education support, or what is your recommendation for new builds?
For new builds is that for any developers coming in, is give them some sort of incentive to put in all the new the best furnace, the tankless water heaters, etc. And not putting in the insulation, just nilly insulation, The
Yeah, there's a real-
insulation needs to be good, yeah.
real challenge there with affordability of new homes and then, you know, efficiency and it's hard to sort of weigh those as a policy maker, it's hard to weigh those two objectives.
Other comments?
Yeah.
Dennis, you look like you want to say something.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how to phrase. I feel like there has to be some type of income tested means for this. Because when I'm reading the are the demographics most in need of this program, my first thought are they the people that can't afford it, right? And yeah, that's what I'm kind of thinking here. It's like making sure that this is a program for all or for most, or if we are excluding people, that we're upfront with that this program is not going to benefit certain people because of this, and we're okay with it, right?
And that's kind of
Yeah.
that second box that Janice has there. What are the equity considerations?
Yeah.
With that.
Like-
I think the target program should be for all. Let's put it that way.
I have a couple questions.
Go ahead. Jason?
So I know the Toronto Help loan program was 0% and $100,000, so it was gobbled up real quick. What was the Ottawa Better Homes program?
Yeah, it's still going today, but similarly, they offered initially a 0% loan that was gobbled up quick. And now the loans are offered at 4%. And the uptake has slowed, but it's still there's still uptake. Some interesting elements there that might add to this conversation that I can sort of pass on to you is because there is the federal program in market as well. The Ottawa program sort of was eligible to all, but targeted folks who weren't as able to take advantage of the federal program. So for example, rental units, if you don't own and occupy the building, you're not eligible for the federal program. So landlords of small units were eligible were one of the target audiences for the Ottawa program. As were folks who because the municipal program had faster outlays of capital up front, the federal program, it's quite a long delay. If anyone's taken advantage of it, it's at least a 6-month delay before you get your check in the mail. And so folks need access to, you know, cash flow or credit to cover that term. So the Ottawa program had more uptake from folks who couldn't handle that cash flow crunch for such a long time. And we're sort of in that credit worthy or credit, you know, limited demographic.
Okay. And when you say federal program, you mean the Canada Greener Homes loan?
That's right.
Okay.
Angela?
Do you have the statistics for which demographics actually utilized your programs in those other cities?
We have some on that. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
So,
we do.
so what age groups took advantage of it, in your opinion?
I can say for the Ottawa program, at first it was sort of a 50 to 60 year age bracket. I think that was the first sort of demographic to jump in. It got a bit younger as the program continued, but as was brought up earlier, first-time homebuyers, we didn't see a lot of them. We did have an ability for first-time homebuyers who have an insured mortgage, right? If they have less than 20% equity in their home, they have to get homeowner insurance or mortgage insurance. So our maximum loan value for those folks was lower, was only 5% of the property value, but they were still eligible. But we didn't see as many of those folks taking advantage of the program, unfortunately. As was said, they're perhaps nervous to take on more debt or busy with other initiatives. We did see certain neighborhoods that there was a fair bit of word of mouth that happens like inevitably with these kinds of things. So once you get sort of, you know, traction in a certain neighborhood, there would be more, we would see more uptake there. We were targeting some of the older neighborhoods, again, as was mentioned here, that have good opportunity for energy efficiency and, you know, better returns on investment too, because of that sort of bigger gap to step up. So we did see some uptake in some of the older neighborhoods where there are owner occupants. Yeah, that's some of the demographics that I saw.
Great. Okay, thanks. Anybody else? Jason, you want to say again, and Eliana after?
Yeah, Do you have a collection of Energuide labeled homes in Aurora specifically?
The word on the breaking news is just yesterday, NRCan actually released all of that data. It's not identifiable to any individual address, but it's now accessible, the whole database. So we just got it. We just got it just yesterday. And we're going to be digesting that over the next few weeks.
Great. Just one follow-up.
Yeah, sure.
Do you have the, so you have the label and the year built of the home at least?
Yeah, we have the impact data from Natalie and her team. They were able to get us that. So that gives us year built, age, or size of home, square footage, and main heating type, heating fuel and heating equipment, and the presence of air conditioning. So those are the key data points that really help drive our model. The Energuide data helps give us examples of retrofit measures and how much energy and emissions they've been able to save in similar vintages or similar building types, and we can then extrapolate that to the market for the Aurora building stock.
Thank you.
I was gonna say, have we ever looked at market data on people that would be getting ready to downsize and put their house on the market? What the return value would be if they would take advantage of this and get the home ready for a first-time home buyer?
I don't think that's been an analysis that I've seen anyone jump into. So you're thinking, so folks who are looking to sell their home, make these upgrades, and then try to capture that value at the point of sale?
Capture the value and so also show the value to the new person purchasing the property.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of those, but the municipal lending approach using the local improvement charge facilitates that quite well because it stays with the property. It's not tied to the individual. It doesn't so at the point of sale, it transfers to the new owner. I think, as was mentioned here, there needs to be transparency in that. So the real estate agents need to understand, and the mortgage providers need to understand the liability that's attached to the home. But in theory, the energy savings, stay with the home. So the new occupant will benefit from lower utility bills and could use that cash flow to then repay the loan, right? So the municipal lending approach really is nice to facilitates that target audience better than any of the other financing models.
Ellen, I'm glad you brought that up because somebody mentioned real estate people before. And if you've ever thought about selling your home, you go to your real estate agent before. And if they're starting to talk about the things that will make it more saleable, this could be one of those things that say, you've got a 15-year-old this, or you need to have new windows or whatever. If they're aware of what the grants, then they may be able to do that. So I wouldn't like to leave real estate people out of the discussion on this for that reason.
Yeah.
Shall we move along? Yep.
Sure. Yeah. Today, real estate agents have been more focused on sort of more aesthetic things, unfortunately. And we think that some of that building labeling, some of that, market education can help shift the comprehension of value of energy efficiency of a home too. But to date, that hasn't really been a big selling feature for home value.
Yeah, interesting to see if they're part of the conversation anyway. So
yeah, absolutely, yeah. Okay, so here we have a series of questions. I'm just going to bring them all up. We have 3 here. So the target buildings, as we mentioned, there's pre-1980 homes and post-1980. In Aurora, the majority of homes are post-1980. Low-rise multi-unit residential buildings are also eligible, but we're like low-rise. It has to be a building that is eligible for an Energuide audit. So I can defer to the auditor in the room to clarify exactly what buildings are eligible, but it needs to be a Part 9 building where a blower door test can be performed. So kind of coming to that same question from the building typology side, do you have suggestions on how Aurora's home energy retrofit loan program could cater to different building types?
Just at me?
To anybody who wants to raise their hand and ask a question about it, I thought we've kind of covered the built form a little bit, but
covered that a bit already.
Maybe this is the same old, but I'm happy to listen to what you have to say or ask a question about it.
Maybe I'll throw all three
Angela?
questions on the table and we can kind of speak to all of them. So then.
Angela has a question before you leave, though. Can we just,
Okay.
can we hear it?
I think given the number of older buildings in Aurora, I think it would definitely be beneficial to target the really old buildings that have barely any insulation, old furnaces, fieldstone foundations that leak like sieves. I mean, they're just, I know from my own house, how horrible it was, and I paid $700 my first month of heating for my gas furnace because it ran all the time. And just like window retrofits in these buildings, most of the new builds and most of the ones post-80s have relatively decent windows, et cetera, and weather stripping and everything like, whereas the older homes, I had single pane glass that was ice in the winter. And there's a lot of people in these older homes, like especially older people on fixed incomes that can't afford to fix them.
Do you have any heritage considerations, Angela, in your home?
They tried to designate and I fought it.
You did, okay.
Yeah.
I want to come back to that because I have the HAC in here, but Dennis has a question.
I think the first two questions, I feel like we're being asked about values, right? The idea of what do we value here? Because I feel like once we answer these questions, it kind of puts us on a path to say, these people will get it, these other people will not, right? And if that's the question of what are our values, I feel like, okay, that's fine. I think for the third question, I feel like that is a bit more kind of data oriented for me. And I'd kind of look to Natalie with regards to what are our key indicators or key performance indicators that we are trying to move the needle on. And I would suggest maybe that's the starting point of, if we start with these, do we feel okay not having the others? Right. So I think that's just something I kind of throw out to everybody to say, how do we want to frame this discussion? And once we have that, I feel like the answers might flow a bit easier.
Other comments or questions? And just piggybacking on that from a value standpoint, I mean, I'm my value is, and everybody's value in here, of course, is the environment and greenhouse gases and the rest of it. But my guess is that many of the homeowners are thinking dollars and cents and renovations and return on investments and things of that nature. And I don't want to make that sound crass, but I mean, we're here to talk about the real end point, which is to try to create, net zero by 2050. It's how we get there. And I think the discussion about return on investment is really important to people, because if they can't afford it, they can't do it. And so let's go ahead.
Like now that I've said that, to throw that out, like one way I could see viewing this is starting at 3. I think cost savings has to be there because of that kind of price idea, right? And I feel like even though climate resiliency is very important to me, GHG emissions are very important to me, maybe it's energy efficiency, and it really depends on how we're messaging how to get more people together. But that really comes from an assumption that we want more people coming in, which is kind of number 2, right? If this is a community environment, having more people kind of jumping on the bandwagon, I can see how that might be more valuable to us as a community rather than individual impact or deep retrofits. But then that goes totally against the idea of, should we be funneling it to what you said, Angela, of like the really old houses, right?
Well, I was saying like pre-1980s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, pre-1980s, not just a really old one,
Right,
but
okay.
pre-1980s.
And I think that's the big thing for me when we're thinking about different building types. If we are prioritizing volume, then I feel like the numbers should bear out. Well, if we had like 80% of pre-1980s like homes doing this retrofit, what would the expected benefit be? If we only had 50% impact, if we only had 20% impact, and I feel like those guideposts or milestones might allow us to judge how effective the program might be and ask ourselves the question, well, if this is all we can achieve, are we going to consider that successful or not?
Right.
So
an impact assessment.
Yes, yeah.
KPIs.
Yeah.
We're going to do this. What do we expect out of the back end?
But I'm a data guy. I tie everything to numbers.
Then just sort of devil's advocate then, if someone were to do an energy retrofit that doesn't meet your GHG reduction targets, doesn't get to the full 80% threshold that you're looking for, are they still is that still a successful retrofit, right? If they only reduce by 20% or 30%, is that sufficient, right?
And I think for me, I think those are where the values are, where we have to feel comfortable to say that, yeah, no, you don't fit into this program, so therefore it isn't, right? I think the program priority should be done at a town level, right? So it's kind of like everybody contributes to it, and it's not necessarily the well, no, I don't know. Maybe it is, I don't know. But I feel like the key performance indicators are town indicators, not specific project indicators. But yeah.
Great feedback. Thank you.
Can we move on then, Janice?
Sure. Yeah. Is there any, so I put all 3 questions here. in
Next
the
steps,
volume.
right?
Yeah. Are there any other comments on this? Because I think that pretty much brings me to the end of my discussion period.
Okay, we just have those, do you still have the next step slide?
I have the next step slide. Yeah. If we're done on this one, I'll just advance to the next. So yeah, just to kind of wrap up the next, what you can expect to hear from us. So stakeholder engagement will continue. Please do circulate the survey while we've got another week or so of it being open. Our analysis is continuing, and we'll model all of these scenarios that you've raised here to give some more data for to inform decisions. We expect to go to council and come back to this group in June timeframe with the feasibility study findings, and that at that point we'd be seeking advice on whether or not we continue with our with the program design.
Okay.
So that
comments on that
is it. Yeah, comments on next steps.
Okay. Can I just go back just a little bit, because we went through context, but people didn't get a real good chance because you went to the questions, and I don't want to belabor this because it's a time thing, but it's also, we're here for a reason. So on page 6, I made a comment about the data that you have, and it's 2018. Lots changed in the world since 2018, probably in this community in particular. So is there any more recent data that you have about the age of residential buildings and the emissions, et cetera, that you have on there?
Yeah, I pulled these graphs from your community energy plan, but we do have the impact data, which is up to date as of in 2024. So we do have age of buildings from 2024, and that also gives us the building typology and their heating source. So yeah, all of this I could regenerate all these graphs with 2024 data. So apologies for using the 2018 graphs. The impact data doesn't have quite as good of a breakdown on the fuel type. It sort of tells you if it's forced air versus a wood stove versus electric baseboard. So I have a harder time differentiating fuel oil from propane from natural gas with the data that I currently have. But that's the main missing piece from our current data set.
Okay.
Yeah, just to point out here that if we concentrate on pre-1980s, that is 22% here, and probably a smaller percent once we kind of look at the 2024. I know that my house is in the 1980 to 1999 range, and I've had to already replace my furnace, right? And my windows, and it's kind of like, part of it is probably energy efficiency, right? Because I had the income to be able to do this, right? But so I feel like there are opportunity cost benefits of doing just pre-1980 versus a larger,
Right. Another segment that we didn't talk about in much detail in the consultation or in the discussion, but is fuel oil. Some programs are targeting those on propane and fuel oil in particular, because those are higher cost and higher emissions heating sources. From your local knowledge of the residents, is there an overlap there between those who are not on the natural gas network and also might be sort of target audiences for this program?
Maybe some of the heritage buildings might. I don't know. I can't speak to it, but maybe you can.
Yeah. Not kidding.
No.
Okay. But the question that I had here also is related to heritage. Does your presentation go to the Heritage Advisory Committee as well, or is it here?
We
It would
have,
be
we don't
this
go to
one.
the committee, but we do have a staff member from Heritage on our internal advisory committee. I think Adam.
Yeah, just,
Yeah.
yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah,
As long as you got Adam on it.
Yeah,
so
Adam
you
is
know where
providing
where
feedback.
those issues and
Yeah.
where they come from.
Mhm.
The other thing that I have,
Oh,
go ahead,
sorry.
Angela, I don't want to take over if you.
No. I just had a question. I heard about a program in Toronto where they're trying to discourage the use of natural gas in stoves and eventually in heating. My parents had just had their system replaced with a heat pump. Is that something that's going to be encouraged in these retrofits?
Hopefully.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, I've got a 20-year-old gas furnace, and I mean, if they're gonna give me a heat pump at a good price, I would do it.
We just put our furnace went and we put in a heat.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if they're gonna target things like stoves that don't use gas or furnaces that don't use gas in order to reduce the emissions.
Janice?
Yeah, definitely heat pumps are part of our modeling of our retrofit packages. They're a big piece of the emissions reduction opportunities. We did speak to Newmarket as well, and they're designing a program that's really just targeting heat pumps. So that could be another approach, is to think about, just one type of equipment, similar to how Halifax did the solar initiative. This could be, keep it simple and just focus on one type of equipment that we know really has that emissions reduction opportunity. That's the approach Newmarket is taking, and we can consider that.
Yeah.
The second part of my question is, will geothermal systems be included in these retrofit?
They're expensive. The program that I've seen from other municipalities that's not sort of singularly focused on one type of technology includes geothermal. I can speak to Ottawa in particular. We definitely included it, but there weren't that many folks who took us up on, or who implemented a geothermal system. We even provided a fairly nice grant to, like, an incentive to help bring down the cost, because they are expensive. We had a few folks install geothermal, but it's a bit site specific. It needs a bit more of a bit more space typically, and they are pretty capital cost heavy. So there's not a ton of uptake of those. We did see a lot of uptake of air source heat pumps in Ottawa.
Ken?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. I know that this is on retrofits, but also we need to make sure that in terms of the building code, that we're not faced with similar, like with houses that are under construction now, that we're not faced with a similar situation in a decade to 20 years from now. I'm just referring here, actually, I'll refer really quickly. So there's the Residential Construction Council of Ontario filed a legal application with the Ontario Superior Court of Justice requesting a mandatory order that would block the City of Toronto, in this case, from enforcing construction standards that go beyond those set out in the Ontario Building Code. Extensively, those obviously that impose green building standards on new construction. So I just wanted to sort of raise that because we're talking about largely here, retrofits of existing buildings, but we're also talking about, getting ahead and heat pumps and new construction and avoiding natural gas and going towards geothermal or whatever the case might be. But I'm just wondering if again, recognizing that this is for retrofit, but I think we've also sort of touched upon the fact that we want to make sure that any new builds sort of adhere to some of these standards, so we're not having to catch up to new builds and so forth. I'm wondering if there's any sort of insight in terms of the kind of, because we're looking at some of the resistance at the beginning of the presentation in terms of cost and so forth, but I'm just wondering if this is something that's being considered as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is a kind of different piece, the green building standard, and I would flip it back maybe to Natalie to chime in on whether or not the town has done legal analysis of that legal proceeding and whether or not it relates to your green building standards or not. If you would be sort of, once that legal proceeding works its way through the courts, which will take a while, is there an implication for the town's current policy approach? I would leave it to Natalie to chime in on that.
Something to say?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure the outcome of that. The town has mechanisms to encourage this type of development. And those are the types of kind of mechanisms, like processes that they use to encourage green development standards. So the legality of it, I believe the town has the ability to put forth these types of standards. Now, what's going to happen through this process, I can't really tell. Yeah, so I'm not sure how to
Yeah, I
answer
support
that.
your assessment of it too, Natalie. From what I've heard and read is that municipalities have multiple legal footings with which they can use to require, higher performing buildings. And mostly that's on the emission side. They can't really play in the energy regulation side. That's a provincial authority. But when it comes to emissions, the towns or the municipalities across Ontario have fairly wide authorities when it comes to climate change mitigation as well as adaptation. So I suspect the City of Toronto will be okay with their with their case, but it will take time to sort of work through the courts. But from a financial point of view, it absolutely makes so much more sense to build things right the first time than to have to go back and fix them later. It's about a 1/4 of the cost to do things right in the beginning, and versus the having to go back in and change out a furnace or change out the windows when they don't, like, before the end of life, or even just especially insulation, adding in insulation once it's all finished and drywalled, it's much more expensive than just doing it while the walls are open. So I support the town to continue their efforts on new construction, new green construction.
Tend to want to use a carrot rather than a stick. But perhaps we may end up having to go to the stick, and that'll be up to the council and others and legal department to decide how to go about that. My suggestion is, the other thing that before we leave it is that you have these 4 examples here, but all of them are very large municipalities. And I'm wondering, just from a precedent standpoint and from an adoption standpoint, we tend to like to look at people that are like us, and we have the same kind of problems. And you mentioned Newmarket. But my suggestion is that when you're looking at recommendations as well, that you take a look at other like-sized municipalities that have the same kinds of problems as well, and look at that as an opportunity. So I like, Halifax went to the solar thing because it's easy to do one thing at a time as opposed to a big puzzle. So and I think one of the barriers is confusion, misunderstanding, et cetera. And that comes from attacking it from a lot of different places at one time. So that's my comment.
There aren't as many examples of smaller municipalities implementing these kinds of programs yet. Newmarkets is still in development, but it is very well. I hear your point for sure, and I will note that because more and more projects or programs are popping up. But there is an there's an economies of scale that does make a difference. Natalie and I did speak with the region, and there might, perhaps there's an opportunity again to work across multiple municipalities for that economies of scale, because that does enable a program to be more cost effective.
Okay.
I believe Halton Hills has an LIC program now too.
Okay.
I don't know if our municipality compares to theirs. I think theirs is more rural.
Don't know either, but I think that's what the consultants need to know is are we comparing apples to apples here?
Yeah, we've done some work with Sudbury, I'm working with Thunder Bay, Lac-Mégantic. We've worked with a number of different sizes of municipalities.
Natalie, at the wind up here, do you have anything you want to ask, say, comment on for the group before we leave? Because your staff, so I'd like to hear what you or Will have to say.
No, I mean, the feedback has been great today, the conversation. So, yeah, thank you. I'm taking notes, and we'll be back with more defined results for you for our next meeting.
So if there's no more comments, I'll just call the vote to receive and refer the comments. And thank very much, Janice and Natalie and Will, for coming here tonight. It's been a very fulsome discussion. I've learned a lot, and I hope we've helped you a lot as well.
And thank you so much for spending your evening on chiming in on these kinds of initiatives. It's really valuable to have that support from the community.
Thanks. All in favor of receiving and referring the comments? Opposed? Carried. Thanks very much. We don't have any more informational items left. Any other business that you want to bring up before we adjourn? Lita, you're bending
Well,
forward.
I just as an added, I'm a newbie to this, this process, and I personally would like to know where I fit in with the community in this. Actually, I guess there's two things I would like is some contact information of the group.
Okay.
Like I don't, like I've met you all for the first time pretty well.
So
And
the connections
The
are important
connections.
for us,
yeah, the connections.
probably through email. Anybody have any problems with email connections and sending the information
You
out
know,
by email?
and,
No, all good?
and
Hands up?
One comment, having a stream on my property, I've noticed over the past 28 years that every time we get a storm, it's going up faster and for longer. And I think the town really needs to look at its resiliency, because last year during the summer, Wellington was flooded. My stream was this far below the bridge. It's normally this deep. It was almost 8 feet deep. Also, the parking lot down by the No Frills was completely flooded.
Mhm.
Young Street down in the south end was flooded. I think the town really needs to start looking at resiliency, or we're gonna be underwater. We're in a huge valley here. If you go over to just before Dufferin and look out, the entire town of Aurora is a valley. And we have about 6 or 7 streams. I mean, eventually the whole thing's gonna be underwater if we don't do something.
It's a stormwater management problem.
Yeah.
We know that we have some aging infrastructure on stormwater management. We know that there has to be some investment in that. And I think that's in our 10-year capital plan to go ahead and do that. But your point is well taken, and I thank you for it. The more often we hear these things, the better it is to get them done. So
I would have to concur with that, with the storm water. There's been a lot of even flooding down in our area by the
Yeah.
Mackenzie Marsh down there.
Yeah, yeah.
There's been a lot of flooding there. And this last snow, I kept getting emails saying, like, I mean, you're on this committee now. I don't know what to do with this when you get people to call you. No, I don't know how some people have found out that I am on this committee, that as I say, I guess it was publicized, but what do you do when people come to you? I sort of asking.
Call the council.
Counselor.
Or Natalie.
Unfortunately, when you call the counselor, they basically don't have much in the way of teeth, because it has to do with what is allowed in the by staff, or what they want to do. Like, for example, they're doing a stream revitalization projects across Aurora, but because myself and my neighbors are on private property, we're not eligible. So basically we have to do our own repairs and our own upkeep. So, I mean, if you fix one part of the town, but it's still broken over here, it's not going to improve here either. It's got to be like a whole system.
good point.
Yeah.
There's no other new business then. Thank you for those comments. I'd like to get a motion to adjourn. This means you get to go home.
I want to introduce you.
Ken, motion?
Oh.
Jason, seconder, all in favor?
Oh.